There is a corner in eastern France where a cycling empire almost ended. It happened on stage 16, during a time trial, where every rider races alone against the clock. A young German named Florian Lipowitz leaned his bike into a sharp right-hand bend. His back wheel slid out from under him. He hit the barrier, and his collarbone snapped. Just like that, his Tour de France was over. Now hold that image. Because a few minutes later, another rider reached the exact same corner. Same speed, same racing line, same slick patch of road. And that rider was the man in the yellow jersey. That rider was Tadej Pogačar. His bike twitched beneath him. He caught it, not with his mind, but with a reflex faster than thought, the body correcting before the brain even knew. For a single heartbeat, the most dominant athlete on earth was a passenger, not a pilot. And then he was gone, riding straight through. 2 days later, he won his 5th Tour de France. But sit with that one heartbeat. Because everything you are about to hear, the records, the numbers, the legend, all of it came within inches of ending on a nameless bend in the road. I am Sebastian, and this is the injury breakdown. Today, Tadej Pogačar joined a club so exclusive, it has only 5 members in more than 100 years of this sport. He is 27 years old, and by almost every measure that matters, he is still getting better. So here's the question tearing cycling apart right now. It is not whether he can win a 6th Tour de France. The real question, the one nobody wants to say out loud, is this: will his own body let him? Because in the entire history of this race, 5 men have won 5 tours. And not one of them ever won a 6th. Not one. So what happened to them? What invisible force stopped the greatest cyclists who ever lived, one by one, at exactly 5? Stay with me, because the answer is not tactics. It is not talent. It is not even age. The answer is written in human tissue. Let us rewind so you see just how absurd this July really was. Pogačar did not simply win the 2026 Tour de France. He took it apart. He effectively won the whole race on stage 6, in the Pyrenees. And from that morning on, he wore the yellow jersey every single day, all the way to Paris. His lead started at 2 minutes and 42 seconds. Then it grew, and grew, until in the final week, it had swollen past 7 minutes. He rolled into Paris 6 minutes and 26 seconds ahead of the second-best cyclist on the planet, the Belgian Remco Evenepoel. In a sport where 3-week races are decided by a handful of seconds, that is not a victory. That is a warning shot fired at an entire generation. But the moment that made me, as a physical therapist, sit up straight happened on a mountain that carries ghosts. Alpe d'Huez. 21 hairpin bends, the most mythologized climb in cycling. For almost 30 years, the record for the fastest ascent belonged to one man, Marco Pantani, the Italian they called the Pirate. Here is why that matters. Pantani set that time in the 1990s, at the peak of cycling's blood doping era, when a drug that floods the body with extra oxygen-carrying red cells could turn a great athlete into an artificial superhuman. For decades, his record stood as a monument to a poisoned generation, a number a clean human was never supposed to touch again. And this July, on stage 19, Pogačar did not just touch it, he destroyed it. He climbed those 21 bends in 35 minutes and 27 seconds, more than a full minute faster than Pantani ever managed. And as a clinician, that number genuinely unsettles me, because it sits right at the edge of what we believed human muscle and blood could deliver without chemical help. So the whole sport is now trapped in one impossible question. How does a rider in the modern, tested, clean era crush a record set by a doped-up legend by over a minute? Is Pogačar something science has never seen? Or is it something darker? Hold that thought. Because to answer it, we have to open him up and look at the engine. Here is the part that lives in the laboratory, and where my job really begins. A rider like Pogačar is a biological outlier, a body that appears once in a generation. It starts with VO2 max, the most oxygen your body can pull from the air and burn inside your muscles. That is the raw size of your engine, and in the greatest athletes alive, it reaches sizes the rest of us will never see, because much of it is decided the day you are born. Then comes the number that wins mountains. Power to weight. Not how strong you are, but how much force you make for every kilogram your legs must drag uphill. It is why the great climbers look almost fragile. But here's the twist. That engine peaks in the late 20s and early 30s. Pogačar is 27. He is not past his prime. He is walking straight into the center of it. So if his motor is only now reaching full heat, why did every five-time champion before him stop at 5? Because it was never the engine that failed them. It never is. There is an uncomfortable truth at the core of this sport. A champion cyclist almost never loses his crown because he gets slow. He loses it to the things that have nothing to do with how fast he can pedal. There are 3 of them. I call them the enemies of the crown. The first is the one we already met, on that corner in stage 16. The crash. In cycling, one bone breaks more than any other. The collarbone. It is a thin strut of bone across the top of your chest, and its job is to hold your shoulder out and away from your body. But it has a fatal design flaw. When you fly over the handlebars and throw out a hand to save yourself, every ounce of that impact shoots up your arm and slams straight into that slender bone. And it snaps. That is exactly what ended Lipowitz's tour. Not a rival, just physics, and one bad line through a bend. And Pogačar was a single twitch of the front wheel from the same fate. So how many times can a man ride at the absolute limit, on wet descents, boxed into a nervous crowd of nearly 200 riders, before probability catches up with him? Every champion is playing a lottery he can never stop entering. And the ticket is his own skeleton. The second enemy is sneakier because you cannot see it coming and you cannot swerve around it. Illness. This July, a stomach virus tore through Pogačar's own team just as they hit the brutal final week. A gut infection, spreading rider to rider through a squad that lives, eats, and travels in each other's pockets. There was open talk that it would reach the man in yellow and end his reign, not with a crash, but with a fever on the eve of the hardest mountains. He dodged the worst of it. This time. But think what that means. Months of training, an entire season of sacrifice, the greatest engine in the sport, and all of it can be undone by an organism too small to see, one no amount of power can defend against. A champion's body is a fortress with one gate that never fully closes. And the third enemy does not live in the legs or the lungs at all. It lives in the head. We call it burnout. And in my field, it is the slow erosion of the mind's willingness to keep ordering the body into pain. Because that is what this sport really is. Not a test of the muscles, but a negotiation with suffering, repeated for 3 weeks, every July, year after year. And here is the detail that proves Pogačar is human. After his win last year, in 2025, he admitted something remarkable for a man on top of the world. He said he had felt drained, emptied out, that the hunger, the thing that drags a champion into the pain when every cell begs him to stop, that even this can quietly run dry. Pogačar himself said something that stays with you. There is a bigger gap between 0 and 1 than between 4 and 5. The higher you climb, the less there is left to want. And a champion with nothing left to prove is a champion already, very quietly, beginning to fade. So now, at last, the question that has haunted this whole video. What happened to the 5-time kings who came before him? Look at the pattern, because it is chilling. Take the great Spaniard, Miguel Indurain, 5 tours in a row. A man whose body was so extraordinary that his resting heart rate was reportedly around 28 beats per minute, about a third of a normal person's, a heart so efficient it barely had to beat to keep him alive. He seemed indestructible. And then, chasing his sixth, on a cold climb to a resort called Les Arcs, the indestructible man simply stopped. He cracked. Cyclists call it the bonk, or hitting the wall, but the biology is precise and merciless. His muscles and his brain had burned through their stored glycogen, their sugar, their only real fuel, and there was nothing left in the tank. Blood sugar collapses. The lights go out. In minutes, on the side of a mountain, the greatest cyclist of his era went from king to mortal. He never won another tour. That is the lesson history keeps teaching us. The body has an expiry date on being the best in the world, and it almost never warns you first. One day you are Miguel Indurain, invincible. The next, you are a man with an empty tank, watching the race right away. 5 champions, 5 reigns, and everyone stopped at exactly 5. Not because they got slow, but because a crash, a virus, a crack in the will, or an empty fuel tank reached them first. So, Tadej Pogačar, 27 years old, 5 Tour de France, an engine only now reaching full temperature, and a record on Alpe d'Huez that forces us to rethink what a clean human body can even do. By the cold mathematics of physiology, he should have years of dominance ahead. His motor is not the question. His motor might be the finest we have ever seen. But the crown has enemies no engine can outrun. A wet corner, a virus on the team bus, a quiet morning when the hunger just is not there, and the ghosts of 5 champions who each ran into one of those enemies before they could reach 6. So I will leave it with you, and I truly want to know what you think. Will Pogačar become the first human in history to win a 6th Tour de France? Or will the same invisible force that stopped Anquetil, Merckx, Hinault, and Indurain, and broke the great Pantani long before his time, reach out and stop him too? Is it the biology that ends a dynasty, or is it the road? Tell me in the comments. And if this question grips you, I have already chased an even wilder one. Could this same Pogačar, with an estimated VO2 max north of 90, survive the 1926 Tour de France, the longest edition ever run, on unpaved mountain roads, with no team cars and no radios? It is a physiologist's honest answer to an impossible thought experiment. And it is on the channel right now. I am Sebastian, from the Injury Breakdown. Look after your body. It is the only bike you can never replace.